Listen, I have to share something with you that took place out of public view at the White House that almost no one is discussing. Two men entered a room together. One of them misrepresented what occurred when they came back out. And what makes this truly unbelievable is that both of them are still misrepresenting it right now. Here's what we can confirm. Trump's Treasury Secretary appeared on national television and said one version of events. Canada's Prime Minister immediately pushed back against it. And the reality sits somewhere between those accounts, and it's far more dangerous than either side wants to admit. So let me rewind to January 20th, 2026, Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum. You know, the event where the planet's most powerful figures gather to act like they care about everyday people, while eating caviar and cutting deals that impact billions of lives. Mark Carney steps up to the podium and doesn't hold back. He stands there and essentially announces that the American world order is finished. Not fading, finished. He says the rules-based system that's kept relative peace since World War II is over. And he does it without saying Trump's name even once. But everyone in that room knew exactly who he meant. Now, what I'm about to show you changes everything because Trump is sitting in the White House watching this and he's livid. The following day he fires back, says Canada only exists because of the United States. Says Carney should be thankful, and then this is where things get interesting. He pulls Carney's invitation to something called the Board of Peace. Yes, apparently that actually existed. But here's what no one saw coming. A week later, Trump grabs the phone and calls Carney. They speak for 30 minutes, and when the call ends, both sides give completely different accounts of what was said. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent goes on Fox News. This is the man responsible for all of Trump's economic policy. And he says, and I quote, Carney was very aggressively walking back his Davos remarks. Walking them back, meaning he apologized, meaning he backed down. But wait, it gets worse. The very next morning, Carney steps in front of reporters in Ottawa and says, to be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I meant what I said in Davos. No apology, no retreat. The exact opposite of what Bessent had just claimed on national television. So, someone is lying. Either Trump's Treasury Secretary invented a story about a phone call, or Canada's Prime Minister is pretending he held his ground when he actually folded. And both possibilities are terrifying when you think about what's at stake, because this isn't just about bruised egos or political drama. We're talking about the economic relationship between two countries that exchange $2.7 billion in goods every single day. Every single day, that's not a mistake. Now, what I'm about to tell you will sound crazy. Reports say Trump slapped tariffs on Canada at 25%, then 35%. And at one point, he threatened to raise them to 50% on steel and aluminum. 50%. Do you grasp what that implies? That's not a negotiating move. That's economic warfare. Canadian factories began shutting down. Thousands of jobs vanished in Ontario alone. The aluminum sector was crushed. Forestry workers were laid off. And all of this because these two men can't sit in a room and reach an agreement. But that's not even the real story. The real story is what happened when they finally met face to face. This is the part that kept me awake last night because in early February, Carney flies to Washington. It's his second visit to the White House since becoming prime minister. And before the meeting, Trump is doing his usual routine, telling reporters Carney will leave very happy, saying, Canada and America have mutual love. Smiling for the cameras, they go into the Oval Office, just them and their teams. And when they emerge once again, two completely different versions of what happened inside. Official readouts say the meeting was constructive and substantive. They'll continue working on deals covering steel, aluminum, and energy. Cabinet members will quickly land agreements in the coming weeks. Standard diplomatic language that means absolutely nothing. But then you start hearing what was actually said in that room, and it's not pretty. Trump tells Carney there's a natural conflict between Canada and the United States, not competition conflict. He says both countries want the same thing, steel production and car manufacturing, and therefore they can't both win. Carney tries to soften the message, says they compete but are stronger together, a classic diplomatic pivot, but you can see it in his face in the photos. This isn't going well. And then Trump, because of course he does, brings up the 51st state idea again. Jokes that if Canada just joined America, all the tariff issues would vanish. Carney has to sit there and act like it's funny. Here's what no one is talking about. This entire saga began with that Davos speech. Carney stood on that stage and said middle powers, countries like Canada, need to band together because if they don't, they're on the menu. His exact words, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. He talked about how the rules-based order was always partly a fiction, how America exempted itself when convenient, how international law was enforced differently depending on who broke it, and he said, all of this needs to stop. Countries need to stop pretending. Stop putting signs in windows just to avoid trouble. It was one of those speeches that earns a standing ovation in the room, but creates enemies in Washington. And Trump doesn't forget that kind of thing. So let's talk about what's really happening, because the surface story, the one about tariffs and trade talks, isn't the real story. The real story is about power. Who has it? Who's losing it? And what they're willing to do to hold on to it. Carney knows something most people don't want to admit. America isn't the same hegemon it was 20 years ago, and Trump is accelerating that decline by weaponizing the economy. Every tariff, every threat, every late-night social media post, it's all speeding up the very thing Trump claims he's trying to stop. Here's where it gets complicated. Canada sits on resources the world desperately needs. Energy, critical minerals, the materials that go into batteries, semiconductors, and everything that powers modern life. And Carney is out there cutting deals with everyone. China, Qatar, India, you name it. Trump initially told him to do it. He actually encouraged Carney to pursue a trade deal with China, said it would benefit Canada. But then Carney delivered that DVO speech, and suddenly Trump flips completely. Now he's threatening 100% tariffs if Canada enters a broader trade deal with China, 100%. That would effectively shut down trade between the two countries overnight. And then this happened. Carney goes to Beijing and negotiates a deal to cut tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. In return, China rolls back some of its retaliatory tariffs on Canadian canola, pork, and seafood. It's a limited deal, not a full agreement, but it works for both sides. Trump loses it, starts posting about Canada becoming a drop-off port for China, claiming Chinese goods will flood into America through Canada. Never mind that Canada and the U.S. have a trade agreement that explicitly prevents that. Never mind the facts. Trump goes into full attack mode, but that's not even the wildest part. The wildest part is what's happening to the relationship itself. Canadian tourism to the United States has fallen sharply. People aren't crossing the border like they used to. Some Canadian stores have pulled American products from their shelves in protest. There's a growing feeling among Canadians that they've been betrayed by their closest ally. And here's what you need to understand about Canada and America. These aren't just neighboring countries. They're integrated in ways most nations could never be. Supply chains cross the border multiple times for a single product. A car part might travel back and forth between Michigan and Ontario 3 or 4 times before the vehicle is finished. So when Trump slaps tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, he's not only hurting Canada. American companies pay those tariffs. American consumers pay higher prices. American workers lose jobs because their employers can't afford the materials they need. This is the definition of a lose-lose scenario. Now, what I'm about to show you changes everything. In that White House meeting, Trump made one thing crystal clear. He said he wants to stop importing cars and steel from Canada, not reduce it, stop it. He wants American production, full stop. Carney tries to explain that this isn't how modern manufacturing works. You can't just flip a switch and relocate entire industries. It takes years, even decades, and the costs would be astronomical. But Trump doesn't care. He has this vision of bringing everything back to America, making the country produce everything domestically, and any nation that gets in the way becomes an economic enemy. Wait, it gets worse. Trump floated the idea of scrapping the entire USMCA agreement. That's the trade deal between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico that he negotiated during his first term, his signature trade achievement. And now he's talking about ditching it in favor of separate deals with each country. Do you know why? Because bilateral deals give him more leverage. When Canada and Mexico negotiate together under USMCA, they're stronger. They can coordinate and push back, but if Trump splits them up and negotiates separately, he can play them against each other. It's classic strongman strategy, divide and conquer. But here's what no one is discussing. Carney isn't backing down. Despite what Besson said on Fox News, despite the tariffs and threats, Carney is building what he calls strategic autonomy, and that directly challenges American dominance. He's signing trade agreements on 4 continents, 12 new deals in 6 months. That's unprecedented for Canada. And every one of those agreements sends a message to Washington. We don't need you as much as you think. Sources now confirm that Carney told Trump all of this during their phone call. He laid it out clearly, said, Canada understands the world has changed, and Canada is adapting with it. And that's likely what triggered Besson's claim that Carney was walking back his remarks. Because from Trump's point of view, any admission that America still matters counts as a retreat. He doesn't grasp nuance. You're either fully with him or completely against him. This is the part that terrifies me. We're watching the unraveling of one of the most successful alliances in modern history. Canada and America have been partners for more than a century. They fought wars together, built the world's longest undefended border, created the most integrated economy on Earth, and it's falling apart over ego and misunderstanding. Documents show that during the White House meeting, Carney offered $1 trillion in Canadian investment in the United States over the next 5 years. $1 trillion for infrastructure, manufacturing, and jobs in American communities. Trump's response, he wants guarantees first. He wants the trade deal settled before any investment flows. He's holding the relationship hostage for better terms. And Carney is sitting there thinking, I just offered you $1 trillion and you're still talking about tariffs. The latest information shows that after the meeting, officials stayed in Washington to continue negotiations. Carney even had dinner with Vice President J.D. Vance. They're trying to break through on steel, aluminum, and energy specifically. But it's not natural at all. It's manufactured. Trump created this conflict by choosing to view Canada as a rival instead of a partner, okay? So we need to go back to the moment when everything actually broke, because I've told you about the Davos speech in the White House meeting. But something else happened that changes how you see all of this. The phone call, the one where Besson says Carney backed down and Carney says he didn't. I want you to really understand what that implies. Think about it. The Treasury Secretary of the United States goes on one of the biggest news networks in the country and makes a specific claim. He says he was in the Oval Office when Trump spoke to Carney, and he states that Carney was aggressively walking back his Davos speech. That's not a throwaway remark. That's an official statement from a senior administration figure designed to send a message. Canada blinked, Canada caved, America won. But then Carney stands in front of Canadian media the very next morning and says the exact opposite. Not that there was a miscommunication, not that the conversation was productive. He directly says he meant what he said in DVUs. Now, here's where this gets really disturbing. Both of these men are professionals. Besant ran one of the largest hedge funds in the world. Carney served as governor of both the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. These aren't amateurs making sloppy mistakes.